Thank you for choosing this video to fall asleep. Make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are listening from. Welcome, dear listener. Tonight we're embarking on a journey far back in time, to a world where gods walked among mortals, where the skies were ruled by thunder and the seas roared with ancient power. Close your eyes and let the soft whispers of history guide you. We are stepping into the enchanting realm of Greek mythology, where tales of gods and heroes have been passed down through the ages, shaping our understanding of the divine and the mortal. In this soothing sleep story, we will unravel the origins of these myths, trace the divine family tree, and whisper the legends that have stood the test of time. Imagine drifting through the clouds of Mount Olympus, home to the immortal gods, and into the deep blue waves of Poseidon's kingdom, where the waters churn with power and mystery. Breathe deeply and allow the ancient stories of love, power, and fate to guide you into a restful slumber. As the myths unfold, let your mind wander through the realms of the gods and the lands of mortals. Now, let's begin. Close your eyes, dear listener, and let me take you back to the dawn of Western civilization. Around 2000 BC, in the heart of what we now know as Greece, stories began to emerge, tales that would evolve into the myths of the gods. By 700 BC, these stories had blossomed, painting vivid pictures of divine beings who looked and acted much like the mortals they ruled. But unlike other belief systems that offered strict rules for living, Greek mythology told stories to entertain, inspire, and explain the mysteries of the world. Imagine the ancient Greeks living under the bright Mediterranean sun, gathering to hear poets like Hesiod and Homer recount the grand adventures of their gods. These stories weren't just for the fireside, they became the heart of religious festivals, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Gods and heroes weren't far-off entities, they were intimately connected to the people, a reflection of human desires, strengths, and weaknesses. In the northern region of Thessaly, nestled within the peaks of Mount Olympus, the gods built their eternal home. Here, they created a divine society, ranking themselves by power and authority. Although many gods roamed the earth freely, 12 stood above all others, the Olympians. They were Zeus, Hera, Apollo, Athena, Artemis, Ares, Hermes, Demeter, Aphrodite, Hestia, Hephaestus, and Poseidon. Together they ruled the world. Their presence felt in every storm, every wave, and every quiet whisper of the wind. And while they were often kind, these gods did not hesitate to punish those who crossed them. Their wrath as swift and fearsome as the forces they commanded. The stories of their power and influence were passed down through the generations, helping the ancient Greeks make sense of the world around them. In the beginning, before the gods ruled the heavens and the earth, there was only chaos, a vast, empty void, silent and dark. From this formless chasm, the first primordial beings emerged: Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Together, they gave birth to life itself, shaping the world as we know it. Gaia, rich with life and growth, was the mother of all creation, while Uranus spread himself across the heavens, becoming her eternal partner. Their union brought forth incredible beings, 3 powerful cyclopes, giants with a single, all-seeing eye in the center of their foreheads, 3 towering hecatoncures, each with 100 arms and 50 heads, and most notably, the 12 mighty titans, the first gods. But though Gaia gave birth to these extraordinary creatures, Uranus was a harsh and fearful father. Seeing the immense strength of his children, he cast the hecatoncures into the depths of Tartarus, an abyss so deep and dark that even the gods feared it. There they were imprisoned, far from the light of the world. Gaia, heartbroken and enraged by Uranus's cruelty, could not stand the injustice. She devised a daring plan to overthrow him, forging a great sickle from the very earth she ruled. But when she called upon her Titan children to strike against their father, they hesitated, afraid of his mighty power, all except one, Cronus, the youngest and boldest of the Titans. Together, Gaia and Cronus set their trap. In a moment of ambush, Cronus struck Uranus with the sickle, severing him from his power and casting his remains into the sea. From the blood that fell to the earth, new life was born: fierce giants, the vengeful Furies, and the majestic ash tree nymphs. and from the sea foam where Uranus's body touched the water, the beautiful goddess Aphrodite emerged, radiant and full of life, a symbol of beauty born from chaos. With Uranus defeated, Cronus claimed the throne of the gods, but his reign was tainted by fear, for both Uranus and Gaia had warned him that one day he too would be overthrown by his own child. Determined to prevent this prophecy from coming true, Cronus took a dark and desperate path. Each time his wife Rhea gave birth to a child, Cronus swallowed them whole, imprisoning them within his own body. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon all were consumed by their father, never to see the light of day. But Rhea, heartbroken by the loss of her children, could not bear it any longer. When it came time to give birth to her sixth child, she hid herself away and in secret delivered her son. This child was Zeus, destined to change the course of history. Rhea, determined to protect him, wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Cronus, who swallowed it without question, believing he had once again secured his rule. Little did he know, far away on the island of Crete, Zeus was growing strong, nurtured by nymphs and hidden from his father's grasps. The prophecy was already in motion, and soon the tides of power would turn. As Zeus grew in strength and wisdom, he learned of his dark destiny, to confront his father Cronus and free his imprisoned siblings. Guided by his mother Rhea and the goddess Metis, Zeus devised a cunning plan to overthrow Cronus and end his tyrannical reign. But he knew this would not be an easy task, for Cronus ruled with fear, and the Titans were powerful beyond imagination. With Metis' help, Zeus prepared a special potion, one that would force Cronus to vomit the children he had swallowed. Zeus, now a young god full of courage, approached Cronus, disguising himself as a humble cupbearer, offering his father the poisoned drink. Cronus, unsuspecting of the treachery within his own household, accepted the drink, and soon after he was overcome with a violent sickness. One by one, Cronus's children, the gods Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, emerged from his body, unharmed but weakened by their long imprisonment. They rejoiced in their newfound freedom, and together they embraced their youngest sibling, Zeus, who had saved them from their father's terrible grasp. In gratitude, they named him their leader, for his cunning and bravery had restored them to the world. But Cronus, filled with rage and desperation, was not ready to relinquish his throne. The war for supremacy had only just begun. Cronus called upon the Titans, his siblings and allies, to stand with him in a battle for the heavens. The earth shook, and the skies darkened as the forces of the Titans prepared for war against the young Olympian gods. This war, known as the Titanomachy, would rage across the cosmos. On one side stood Cronus and the Titans, led by the mighty Atlas, whose strength was unmatched. On the other stood Zeus and his siblings, ready to claim their rightful place as rulers of the universe. For a time it seemed the Titans would prevail, their fury and power overwhelming the young gods. But Zeus, ever wise, knew that brute force alone would not win the day. In a daring and dangerous move, Zeus descended into the deepest abyss of the earth, to the prison of Tartarus, where the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires had been cast down long ago. Knowing they had been wronged by Uranus and imprisoned by Cronus, Zeus offered them freedom in exchange for their allegiance in the war. The Cyclopes, grateful for their release, crafted powerful weapons for the Olympians, the thunderbolt for Melimelite, Zeus, the trident for Poseidon, and the helm of invisibility for Hades. With these mighty weapons, and the sheer power of the freed Hecatoncheires, the tide of battle shifted. The Olympians, bolstered by their new allies, launched a final, decisive attack. The Titans were defeated, their reign brought to a bitter end. All but Atlas were cast into the depths of Tartarus, imprisoned for eternity. As for Atlas, Zeus punished him with the eternal task of holding up the heavens, his mighty shoulders forever burdened by the weight of the skies. The war had been won, but the earth was still trembling with the echoes of the great clash. Peace had not yet come. Gaia, grieving for her children trapped in Tartarus, gave birth to a monstrous being, a creature of such terror and destruction that even the gods trembled at its approach. This was Typhon, the deadliest monster in all of Greek mythology. Typhon rose from the depths, his fury shaking the very foundations of the world. Flames burst from his mouth, and his massive wings blotted out the sun. The gods, even Zeus, feared Typhon's wrath, for he was stronger than anything they had ever faced. Many fled in terror, but Zeus alone stood firm, determined to defend the world he had fought so hard to claim. Armed with his thunderbolts, Zeus engaged Typhon in a battle that shook the heavens and the earth. The fight was fierce and destructive, but in the end Zeus's power prevailed. He struck Typhon down, burying him deep beneath Mount Etna in Sicily, where his fiery rage still stirs the mountain to this day. With Typhon defeated and the Titans imprisoned, Zeus and his siblings finally brought order to the cosmos. They divided the realms among themselves. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon claimed the seas, and Hades ruled the underworld. Together, they established the rule of the Olympians, the new gods of the universe. The age of the Titans had ended, and the reign of the Olympians had begun, shaping the world and the lives of mortals for centuries to come. With the Titans defeated and the Olympians in control, the gods turned their attention to the world of mortals. Zeus, now king of the gods, wanted to fill the earth with life, to populate it with creatures that would honor the gods and thrive under their rule. To this end, he tasked two of the remaining Titans, the brothers Prometheus and Epimetheus, with creating all living beings. Epimetheus eagerly began his work, distributing qualities to each creature he molded. He gave speed to the deer, strength to the lion, wings to the birds, and shells to the tortoise. However, in his enthusiasm, Epimetheus quickly ran out of gifts before he reached the last creation, human beings. Realizing he had left mankind defenseless, without fur, claws, or wings, he turned to his brother Prometheus for help. Prometheus, known for his wisdom and foresight, took pity on humanity. He saw their potential for greatness, but also their vulnerability. Without a gift to help them survive, they would surely perish. So in an act of defiance against Zeus, Prometheus ascended to the heavens and stole fire from the gods. This divine spark, once reserved for the immortals alone, he bestowed upon humanity. With fire, mankind could warm themselves, cook their food, forge tools, and survive the harsh elements. Zeus, however, was furious when he discovered what Prometheus had done. Fire was a powerful gift, and with it humanity could thrive in ways that made them more independent of the gods' whims. Prometheus's act was not just a gift of survival, it was a symbol of defiance, an act of rebellion against the divine order Zeus had worked so hard to establish. In his wrath, Zeus decided to punish both Prometheus and humanity for this transgression. He devised a cruel fate for the Titan who had defied him. Prometheus was chained to a remote peak in the Caucasus Mountains, bound with unbreakable chains forged by the god Hephaestus. Each day, an enormous eagle, a symbol of Zeus's power, would descend upon Prometheus and tear at his liver, devouring it piece by piece. But as Prometheus was immortal, his liver would regenerate each night, only for the torment to begin again the next day. Thus, Prometheus was condemned to an eternal cycle of suffering for the sake of mankind. But Zeus's punishment did not end with Prometheus. He also sought to bring misfortune to the human race, who had now gained the power of fire. Zeus ordered Hephaestus to create a beautiful mortal woman, Pandora, and the other gods endowed her with gifts, beauty, charm, and grace. However, Hermes, the trickster god, gave her curiosity and a deceptive heart. Zeus presented Pandora to Epimetheus, despite Prometheus's warnings to his brother never to accept gifts from Zeus. Entranced by her beauty, Epimetheus accepted her without hesitation. Along with Pandora came a mysterious jar later referred to as Pandora's box that she was told never to open. However, curiosity soon overcame Pandora, and one day, unable to resist the temptation, she lifted the lid. In that moment, all the evils of the world were unleashed: disease, sorrow, death, and suffering spilling out and spreading across the earth. Panicked, Pandora slammed the lid shut, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and only one thing remained trapped inside the box: hope. Thus, despite the hardships that now plagued humanity, hope was left to guide them through the darkest times, a glimmer of light amidst the chaos and suffering that had been unleashed. Prometheus's love for mankind had come at a great cost, and yet, in the end, it was his gift of fire, paired with the hope Pandora had preserved, that enabled humans to survive and persevere in a world ruled by powerful, often merciless gods. With the evils of the world unleashed by Pandora's fateful curiosity, mankind was left to navigate a harsh and unforgiving reality. Sickness, death, and sorrow now touched every corner of the earth, but even in the darkest moments, hope remained, a single thread tying humans to the possibility of light and survival. As mortals struggled with the hardships bestowed upon them, they began to find strength not in divine intervention, but in their own resilience, intelligence, and courage. Zeus, having enacted his revenge on both Prometheus and mankind, believed he had restored balance. Yet Prometheus's defiance had planted the seeds of independence within the human race. With the gift of fire, mortals began to shape their own destiny. They used this divine spark to warm their homes, forge tools and weapons, and cook their food. With fire, they created light to push back the darkness, and with light they began to discover their own potential. As humanity grew stronger, they became less reliant on the whims of the gods. They built cities, learned the arts of farming and craftsmanship, and passed down knowledge from one generation to the next. They told stories of the gods, of their power, their flaws, and their interactions with mortals, but slowly, humans realized they had the power to shape their own fate. But Zeus, ever watchful, was not yet finished. His distrust of mortals only grew as he saw them flourish. He feared that if left unchecked, mankind might rise too high, challenging even the gods themselves. To keep them in their place, Zeus continued to intervene in mortal affairs, often in ways that were swift and severe. One of the most famous tales of Zeus's wrath came in the form of a great flood. Angered by the growing impiety and cruelty of mortals, Zeus decided to cleanse the earth of humanity. He called upon his brother Poseidon, the god of the seas, to unleash a flood that would wipe out nearly all of mankind. For days, the waters raged, drowning the cities and villages, sweeping away mortals in a tide of divine retribution. Yet even in the face of Zeus's fury, hope remained. Two mortals, Deucalion and Pyrrha, survived the flood, chosen by the gods for their piety and goodness. After the waters receded, Deucalion and Pyrrha were tasked with repopulating the earth. They sought guidance from the oracle of Themis, who instructed them to cast the bones of their mother behind them. Understanding this cryptic message, they realized their mother was the earth, Gaia, and so they threw stones over their shoulders. From these stones, new men and women were born, and humanity was given a second chance to thrive. This story of destruction and rebirth became a powerful symbol of humanity's resilience. Though the gods wielded immense power and often ruled with fear, mortals had something more enduring, the capacity to rebuild, to hope, and to learn from their mistakes. And as the generations passed, the balance between gods and mortals shifted. The gods were still revered, but no longer were they seen as all-controlling forces. Instead, they became figures of myth, part of the natural world, but also distant and flawed, just like the humans they watched over. In time, the legends of the gods grew into lessons about the nature of life, power, and consequence. Zeus's rule continued, but the stories of his interference with humanity took on a different tone. The Olympians became more involved in guiding mortals, sometimes helping them, sometimes hindering them, but always shaping the world in ways that reflected both divine power and human frailty. Prometheus's defiance had not just given fire to man, it had given mankind the ability to think, to reason, and to hope. And it was hope, above all, that carried humans forward, through suffering and hardship, through triumph and failure, as they navigated their place in a world ruled by gods but lived by mortals. Though mankind now possessed fire and the resilience to endure life's hardships, the gods remained ever present, their influence felt in every storm, every earthquake, and every twist of fate. Zeus, seated atop Mount Olympus, ruled with absolute authority, his thunderbolt a symbol of his unmatched power. Yet, like all the Olympian gods, Zeus was not immune to the flaws of emotion. He was a ruler of both justice and whim, known for his wisdom but also his unpredictable temper. Despite his role as king of the gods, Zeus's interactions with mortals were frequent and often fueled by his insatiable desires. His countless affairs with mortal men led to the birth of many demigods heroes who walked the line between the mortal and divine realms. One of the most famous of these children was Heracles, known to the Romans as Hercules, a figure who embodied the strength and bravery of both gods and men. But with each affair, Zeus stirred the wrath of his wife, Hera, the queen of the gods. Hera, goddess of marriage and family, was fiercely protective of her position and her honor. Though she was one of the most powerful goddesses on Olympus, her marriage to Zeus was a source of constant frustration. Zeus's infidelities enraged her, and she often sought revenge not on her husband, but on the mortal women and children born from these unions. Her relentless persecution of Heracles, for example, drove the hero to face unimaginable trials, including the famous 12 labors. Yet for all her anger, Hera's actions revealed the complexity of the gods. Her jealousy and pain mirrored human emotions, making her both feared and relatable to those who worshipped her. As the gods continued to meddle in mortal lives, their personalities became as much a part of Greek life as the changing seasons. Each god had their domain, their sphere of influence, and their own distinct character. Poseidon, god of the sea, was as volatile as the oceans he commanded, his mood shifting between calm and tempestuous. Sailors feared his wrath, for he was known as the Earthshaker, capable of causing earthquakes and massive sea storms that could destroy fleets in a single sweep of his trident. Poseidon, too, had his rivalries, most notably with his brother Zeus. Though they shared power over the cosmos, Poseidon often felt slighted, believing his domain of the sea was inferior to Zeus's rule over the skies. In one myth, Poseidon joined Hera and Athena in a plot to overthrow Zeus, binding him with unbreakable chains. However, their rebellion was short-lived. Zeus, with the help of the loyal Hecatoncheires, broke free and punished those who dared challenge him. Meanwhile, in the underworld, the third brother of the Olympian triad ruled a very different realm. Hades, god of the dead, was a figure of both fear and respect. He governed the souls of the departed, ensuring that the balance between life and death was maintained. Though often seen as cold and distant, Hades was not cruel. His role was to guard the boundaries between the world of the living and the dead, and he did so with solemn duty. His marriage to Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, gave rise to one of the most important myths in Greek mythology, the story of the changing seasons. Demeter, goddess of the harvest and fertility, was devastated when Hades abducted her daughter to be his queen. In her grief, Demeter refused to allow the earth to bear fruit, plunging the world into a perpetual winter. Zeus, seeing the devastation, intervened and brokered a deal. Persephone would spend part of the year in the underworld with Hades and part of the year with her mother. This cycle of reunion and separation explained the seasons. When Persephone was with Demeter, the earth flourished in spring and summer. When she returned to the underworld, the earth withered in autumn and winter. This myth, like many others, demonstrated the intricate connections between the gods, nature, and human existence. It was through these stories that the ancient Greeks understood the forces that governed their world. The gods were not distant deities, but active participants in life, each with their own powers, passions, and flaws. As the Olympians influenced both nature and fate, they also shaped the mortal heroes who rose to greatness under their watchful eyes. These heroes, often born from the unions of gods and mortals, were central to many of the myths that defined Greek culture. Figures like Perseus, who defeated the Gorgon Medusa, and Achilles, whose strength and pride dominated the Trojan War, became symbols of the heroic ideal. Their stories, though filled with tragedy and struggle, celebrated the qualities that the Greeks valued most: bravery, honor, and the willingness to face destiny. Yet, for all their power, the gods could not escape their own flaws and limitations. They quarreled, betrayed each other, and often acted out of jealousy or pride. It was this complexity that made them both terrifying and relatable to the mortals who worshipped them. The gods of Olympus were more than distant rulers, they were a reflection of the very humans they governed, with all the emotions, desires, and conflicts that come with being alive. And so, dear listener, as you drift into sleep, remember that these ancient tales of gods and heroes are not just stories of the past. They are windows into the timeless struggles and triumphs that define the human experience, woven into the very fabric of the world we live in. Let their whispers guide you into a peaceful slumber, where the gods still roam the heavens and the heroes of old continue to inspire. Story 2. Let your thoughts drift back to a time long before written history, when the first stories of the gods began to take shape. Around 700 BC, these myths emerged as a way for the ancient Greeks to understand the world around them, its mysteries, its beauty, and its dangers. Unlike other belief systems that focused on strict moral codes, Greek mythology was full of stories that entertained, inspired, and explained the inexplicable forces of nature. Imagine the people of ancient Greece, gathered around a fire or in the grand temples of their cities, listening to the poets and storytellers recount the lives of the gods. They heard how the gods ruled over every aspect of life. Zeus controlled the thunder and skies, Poseidon stirred the seas, and Hades governed the underworld. These gods were not distant and untouchable, they were deeply involved in the lives of mortals, guiding them, testing them, and sometimes punishing them for their hubris. The gods were powerful but flawed. Much like the mortals they ruled, they could be kind and generous, but also jealous, vengeful, and prideful. And it was in these human-like traits that the Greeks found connection. The gods' stories, full of love, anger, and betrayal, mirrored the lives of the people who told them. They weren't perfect beings to be feared. They were figures that reflected the complexities of human nature. As these stories spread from one generation to the next, they became more than just tales of the gods, they became lessons. They taught people about courage, the dangers of pride, the value of wisdom, and the inevitability of fate. Through these myths, the Greeks found answers to life's greatest questions. Why does the sun rise? Why do the seasons change? What happens to us after we die? The gods, with their grand powers and human flaws, became the key to understanding the world. Tonight we'll explore these stories where the divine and the mortal collide in ways both wondrous and tragic. We'll begin with one of the greatest gifts the gods ever gave to mankind, the creation of the first heroes, mortals who stood between the world of the gods and the world of men. In the beginning, when the world was still young and the gods ruled the heavens, there was one among them who saw the potential for something greater. His name was Prometheus, a titan known for his wisdom and foresight. While Zeus and the Olympians governed the cosmos with thunderbolts and tridents, Prometheus's thoughts were with the mortals who inhabited the earth, humans, fragile and unprepared for the harsh realities of the world. At the time, mankind lived in darkness. They had no warmth to shield them from the cold, no light to guide them through the night, and no tools to defend themselves against nature's wrath. Watching their struggles, Prometheus felt pity. He knew that within these mortals lay the potential for greatness, but without the means to grow and thrive, they would remain vulnerable and powerless. And so, Prometheus made a daring decision, one that would change the course of history. He would defy the will of Zeus and give mankind the greatest gift of all, fire. With fire, mortals would no longer be at the mercy of the elements. They could cook their food, forge weapons, and create light in the darkest of nights. Fire would become the spark of civilization itself. Prometheus climbed to the heights of Olympus, and in secret, stole a flame from the chariot of the sun god, Helios. He descended to the earth and placed the flame into the hands of man, watching as the first flickers of light began to illuminate their world. The mortals, now armed with the divine fire, grew stronger. They built homes, crafted tools, and began to shape their own destiny. They were no longer helpless. Fire had given them the power to survive and, more importantly, to thrive. But the act of giving fire to mankind was not without consequences. Zeus, enraged by Prometheus's defiance, saw this as a threat to his rule. Fire was the domain of the gods, and by giving it to mortals, Prometheus had upset the balance. To punish the Titan for his transgression, Zeus condemned Prometheus to an eternal torment. Bound to a rocky peak, Prometheus would have his liver torn out each day by an eagle, only for it to regenerate overnight, and the torment to begin again at dawn. Yet even in his suffering, Prometheus did not regret his choice, for from the fire he had given to mankind came something even more remarkable: the first heroes. Mortals, emboldened by the power of fire, began to rise up and perform feats that rivaled even the gods. These heroes, born from the union of mortal will and divine power, became the bridge between the world of men and the realm of the gods. One such hero was Perseus, born of Zeus and the mortal woman Danae. Perseus's tale would become legend, but it all began with Prometheus's gift of fire, a spark that ignited the spirit of heroism within mankind. The age of heroes had begun, and with it, the stories that would shape the destiny of both mortals and gods. And so, dear listener, as you drift into sleep, remember that the fire Prometheus gave to humanity was more than just warmth and light. It was the beginning of something far greater. It was the start of a new age, an age where mortals could dream of becoming more than they were, of rising above their fate, and of becoming heroes in their own right. From the union of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Danae, a mortal princess, came one of the greatest heroes of Greek mythology, Perseus. His story, like many others, began with both divine intervention and mortal struggle. Cast into the sea in a wooden chest with his mother, Perseus's life was marked by danger and destiny from the very beginning. His grandfather, fearing a prophecy that his grandson would one day bring about his death, had sought to rid himself of the boy. Yet the gods had other plans, and the chest washed ashore on the island of Seriphos, where Perseus and his mother were taken in by a fisherman. As Perseus grew into a young man, his fate became intertwined with that of King Polydex, ruler of Seriphos. The king, desiring Danae for himself, sought to rid himself of Perseus by sending him on a seemingly impossible quest to bring back the head of Medusa, the fearsome Gorgon whose gaze could turn anyone to stone. It was a task meant to lead Perseus to his doom, but the gods who had watched over him since birth were not about to abandon him now. Knowing the danger that awaited him, Perseus received aid from the gods. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, gave him a polished bronze shield, and Hermes, the swift messenger god, provided him with winged sandals that would allow him to fly. From Hades, ruler of the underworld, Perseus received a helm of invisibility, and from Hephaestus, the god of the forge, a sharp, unbreakable sword. With these divine gifts, Perseus was prepared to face the terror of Medusa. The journey to find Medusa was perilous, for she lived in a land far from the realm of men, hidden away with her two immortal sisters. But Perseus, clever and brave, used the tools the gods had given him wisely. He flew across the sky on Hermes' sandals, invisible to the eyes of those who might stop him. When he finally reached Medusa's lair, he did not meet her gaze directly. Instead, he used Athena's reflective shield to see her without turning to stone. With one swift stroke of his sword, Perseus beheaded Medusa while she slept, capturing her head in a magical sack. From her severed neck sprang the winged horse, Pegasus, and the warrior Chryser, beings born of Medusa's union with Poseidon. Perseus had not only succeeded in his quest, but had gained powerful allies as a result. Victorious, Perseus returned to Seriphos, where he used Medusa's head to turn King Polydex and his followers to stone, freeing his mother from the king's unwanted advances. But Perseus's journey didn't end there. He went on to marry Andromeda, a princess he rescued from a sea monster during his travels, and together they founded a great lineage that would include some of the most famous heroes of Greek mythology. Perseus's tale is one of bravery, intelligence, and divine favor. His success was not just due to his strength or the gifts of the gods, but to his ability to use those gifts wisely, making him a hero in both the mortal and divine realms. His story, like the fire Prometheus gave to mankind, represents the potential within every mortal to rise above their circumstances and face the impossible. And so, dear listener, let Perseus' journey remind you that even in the face of great challenges, there is always a way forward. Just as he looked to the gods for guidance and found within himself the courage to triumph, so too can we find our strength in times of trial. As you close your eyes and drift into sleep, let the story of Perseus and the lessons of his quest guide you through your own dreams of adventure and bravery. While the gods often bestowed gifts upon mortals that led to grand adventures and triumphs, not all stories were filled with glory and victory. Some were tales of love, loss, and the heart-wrenching consequences of mortal fragility. One of the most poignant of these tales is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, a love that transcended life itself, only to be shattered by a moment of hesitation. Orpheus, the son of Apollo, was no ordinary mortal. Blessed with the gift of music by his divine father, Orpheus's songs could charm all living things. His music was so powerful that even the trees bent closer to hear his melodies, and wild animals would gather peacefully at his feet. It was said that his lyre could soothe the very soul, and it was through this gift that Orpheus captured the heart of the beautiful Eurydice. Their love was pure and deep, but like so many stories of the ancient world, it was not meant to last. One fateful day, as Eurydice walked through a meadow, she was bitten by a venomous snake. Her life was cut tragically short, and her soul descended into the underworld, leaving Orpheus heartbroken and desolate. Overcome with grief, Orpheus resolved to do what no mortal had ever dared. He would travel to the underworld and bring Eurydice back. With the sound of his lyre, Orpheus made his way into the shadowy realm of Hades, the god of the underworld. As his mournful music echoed through the dark corridors of the dead, even the spirits of the underworld paused to listen. The mighty Hades and his queen Persephone were moved by Orpheus's song, a melody that spoke of undying love and unbearable loss. Touched by his sorrow, Hades agreed to let Eurydice return to the world of the living, but with one condition. Orpheus must not look back at her as they ascended from the underworld until both were safely in the light of the upper world. With hope in his heart, Orpheus led Eurydice up the long, dark path toward the land of the living. He could not see her, but he felt her presence just behind him, her footsteps light as whispers. Closer and closer they came to the surface, the dim light of day just beginning to appear. But as they neared the exit, doubt began to creep into Orpheus's mind. What if Hades had tricked him? What if Eurydice was not truly behind him? Unable to resist, Orpheus turned to look, just as they reached the threshold. For a brief moment, he saw her, his beloved Eurydice, her face filled with sorrow as her form began to fade. In that instant, she was pulled back into the darkness, her soul lost to the underworld forever. Orpheus's heart shattered once more, this time with a loss he could never undo. The tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice is a reminder of the fragility of life and love. Though Orpheus was gifted by the gods and blessed with talents beyond mortal reach, even he could not escape the weight of human frailty. His story speaks to the importance of trust, of patience, and of the consequences that can arise from a single moment of doubt. After Eurydice's final loss, Orpheus wandered the earth, his music now filled with a deep, haunting sadness. His songs no longer charmed the living, but spoke only to his pain, echoing through the forests and mountains. His journey, like that of so many mortals, ended not in triumph, but in quiet despair. Yet even in this sorrow, there is a lesson. The gods, though powerful, could not shield mortals from the consequences of their own choices. Orpheus's story reminds us that love is both beautiful and fragile, a force that can inspire great acts but also lead to heartbreak. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the story of Orpheus and Eurydice remind you of the delicate balance between hope and despair, love and loss. In the stillness of night, may their tale echo softly, a reminder of the power of love that even death cannot fully sever. The gods' role in mortal fate, Zeus and the Trojan War. The gods of Olympus were never content to merely watch the lives of mortals from afar. Their influence stretched across the earth, shaping events, guiding fates, and often sparking great conflicts. One of the most famous tales in which the gods played a central role was the Trojan War, a war that began not just because of human desire, but because of divine meddling, pride, and jealousy. It all started with a single, fateful decision. At a wedding feast, Eris, the goddess of discord, threw a golden apple into the midst of the gods, inscribed with the words for the fairest three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each claimed the apple for themselves, and their rivalry over who was the most beautiful grew fierce. Zeus, not wishing to take sides in such a delicate matter, decided that the judgment should be left to a mortal man, Paris, a prince of Troy. Paris, unaware that his choice would lead to the downfall of his city, was visited by each of the goddesses, who offered him a gift in exchange for his favor. Hera promised him power and kingship over all of Asia. Athena offered him unparalleled wisdom and success in battle, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, offered him the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Swayed by Aphrodite's offer, Paris awarded her the apple, thus setting in motion the chain of events that would lead to war. Helen, already married to Menelaus, king of Sparta, became the catalyst for the conflict. When Paris took her away to Troy, Menelaus called upon the kings of Greece to honor their oaths and help him retrieve his wife. Thus began the Trojan War, a decade-long siege that would see the fall of one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. But the war was not fought by mortals alone. The gods themselves took sides, their favor shifting the tides of battle. Hera and Athena, enraged by Paris's choice to favor Aphrodite, threw their support behind the Greeks, while Aphrodite and Apollo sided with the Trojans. Even Zeus, though attempting to remain neutral, found himself drawn into the conflict, his will affecting the outcome of key moments on both sides. The Greek heroes, including Achilles, Odysseus, and Agamemnon, were known not just for their bravery but for their relationships with the gods. Achilles, the mightiest of them all, was the son of the sea nymph Thetis, and it was through divine intervention that his body was nearly invulnerable, save for his infamous heel. Athena guided the clever Odysseus, while Hera and Poseidon worked behind the scenes to ensure the Greeks had the upper hand in key battles. However, divine favor was not always a blessing. Achilles, though nearly invincible, was doomed by his pride and the wrath of the gods. His rage after the death of his beloved friend Patroclus, who was killed by the Trojan prince Hector, consumed him, driving him to slaughter Hector in vengeance. Yet, even in his triumph, Achilles could not escape his own fate. As the gods had foretold, he met his end on the battlefield, struck down by an arrow to his vulnerable heel, shot by Paris with the guidance of Apollo. Meanwhile, the Trojans, though favored by some of the gods, were not spared the consequences of divine whims. Priam, the king of Troy, lost his sons in battle, and the city was eventually betrayed by the cunning of Odysseus and the infamous wooden horse. The gods, for all their power, could not prevent the fall of Troy, nor could they save the mortals they favored from the ravages of war. The Trojan War, though a battle of men, was a reflection of the gods' rivalries, desires, and grudges. The mortals who fought and died on the plains before Troy were, in many ways, pawns in a larger, divine game. But even the gods, for all their might, could not stop fate from unfolding as it was destined to. The fall of Troy was foretold, and despite their interventions, the gods could only watch as the city burned and the mortal world was forever changed. And so, dear listener, the story of the Trojan War reminds us that even when the gods intervene, they cannot change what is fated to be. The will of the gods is powerful, but even they must bow to the forces of destiny. As you close your eyes and drift deeper into sleep, let the lessons of the Trojan War remind you of the delicate balance between power and fate, and how even the gods cannot escape the course of events once they have begun to unfold.